All right, let's just get right into it. Chances are you've done this before. In an effort to eat a little healthier, you've pushed that regular old white sugar to the back of the cupboard, and instead, you're reaching for what we all think are natural sweeteners. Thinking you've found a totally guilt-free way to get that sweet fix. But, have you really? Or are we just swapping one kind of sugar for another?
I mean, this quote right here, this is something I hear all the time. It's so common, right? You're in the kitchen, you're trying to make good, healthy choices, maybe for yourself, maybe for your family, and you reach for the honey or maple syrup. It just feels better. It feels more wholesome, more, straight from the earth than some highly processed white powder.
And that is the big question we're going to tackle today. We're going to look past the clever marketing, dive into the actual science, and uncover some pretty surprising truths about what's really in these popular sugar substitutes. So, is one actually better than the others? Let's find out.
All right, first things first, let's meet the main contenders in this sweet showdown. We're talking about the big three that you'll find in pretty much any kitchen that's trying to be a little more health conscious: honey, agave, and of course, pure maple syrup.
So you've got honey, right? Kind of the ancient classic. People have been praising it for ages for its antioxidant and antimicrobial properties, especially when it's raw. Then you've got pure maple syrup, tapped straight from trees, and it's got its own unique mix of vitamins and minerals. And then there's agave, the one that kind of shot to fame because it was marketed as this super healthy, low glycemic plant-based choice.
Okay, but here's where that whole natural image starts to get, a little blurry, especially when you look at agave. It's not like someone just taps a plant and this syrup comes out. No way. It goes through a pretty heavy-duty industrial process. They extract the fluid, they filter it, they heat it up, and that heating process is what breaks everything down into a super concentrated fructose syrup. It's a lot more processed than that straight-from-the-plant picture we have in our heads.
So to really get what's going on, we have to look past the pretty labels on the bottle and get into the science of it all. Because, at a chemical level, your body doesn't just see sugar. It sees specific molecules, and it processes them in very, very different ways.
Okay, so here's the most important thing you need to know. All of these sweeteners are basically made of two simple sugars, glucose and fructose. Think of glucose as your body's main fuel source. It goes right into your bloodstream and gives you energy. Fructose, though, that's fruit sugar. It takes a completely different route. It gets sent almost entirely to your liver to be processed, and believe me, that difference is absolutely everything.
And this chart is where things get really interesting. Take a look at agave nectar on the left. It is packing around 84% fructose. I mean, just let that sink in. That is way higher than high fructose corn syrup, the stuff so many of us go out of our way to avoid. And honey, it's down around 40% fructose. So the very sweetener that's been marketed to us as the super healthy option is actually the most concentrated source of the sugar we really need to watch out for.
So what's the big deal? Why is so much fructose a problem? Well, your liver is a champ at handling the small amounts of fructose you get from, say, eating an apple. But when you just flood it with these super concentrated syrups, it gets completely overwhelmed. It just can't keep up. And health experts are pretty clear that this kind of overload can lead to a whole bunch of serious health problems. We're talking fatty liver disease, high triglycerides, even memory loss.
And here's where the marketing gets really clever, and honestly, a little tricky. Agave's biggest claim to fame is its low glycemic index. It doesn't spike your blood sugar, and that's true. But now we know why. It's because it's almost all fructose, which goes straight to the liver instead of the bloodstream. So that low GI score, the thing that makes it sound so healthy, is actually a giant red flag for its incredibly high fructose content. It's a total catch-22.
Okay, so agave is looking pretty sketchy at this point. So what about maple syrup? Well, there is a recent clinical study that paints a really nice picture for it. Now, full disclosure, it's important to note that this study was funded by the folks who produce maple syrup in Quebec. But, hey, let's just look at the data they found. What the researchers found was pretty cool. When people switched from regular refined sugar to the same amount of maple syrup, they actually saw some positive changes, things like a decrease in belly fat and better blood pressure numbers. And the thinking is that maybe it's all the other good stuff in pure maple syrup, the compounds that refined sugar is totally missing, that might be giving it this protective edge.
So, that's it then, right? Case closed. Maple syrup is the winner? Well, not so fast. We've got to do a little scientific reality check. What happens when we look at a study that isn't funded by any particular industry? Yeah,
The real question is, what happens when you take all these sweeteners and put them head-to-head against each other and against plain old cable sugar in a really tightly controlled clinical trial? Do those supposed benefits actually hold up under the microscope? Let's see what an impartial showdown reveals.
And here comes the plot twist. A study in the Journal of Nutrition did exactly that, a true head-to-head comparison. For 2 weeks, they gave people a daily dose of either honey, sucrose, which is just table sugar, or high fructose corn syrup. And the conclusion? Well, it was a bit of a bombshell. From a metabolic standpoint, they all produced similar effects.
Let's just let that sink in for a second. When you put them under the strict conditions of a lab, there was basically no real difference between honey and plain old sugar when it came to things like blood sugar or inflammation. And get this, here's the real kicker. All 3 of them, including honey, significantly increased triglyceride levels. That's a huge risk factor for heart disease. So when you look at how your body actually processes them, they were pretty much interchangeable.
So this brings us to the real sweet truth, doesn't it? It seems like maybe we're all getting a little too caught up in the tiny details, arguing about which sweetener is slightly better, when we should be zooming out and looking at the bigger picture.
And here it is. This is really the bottom line. According to the U.S. dietary guidelines and other major health groups, sweeteners like honey, maple syrup, and agave, they all fall under one simple category: added sugars. And once they hit your system, your body honestly doesn't care if that sugar molecule came from a beehive, a maple tree, or a sugarcane field. Sugar is sugar, and it all counts towards your daily limit.
So what is that limit? Well, for women, the American Heart Association says we should aim for no more than 24 grams of added sugar a day. To put that in perspective, that's only about 6 teaspoons.
For men, the number is a little higher, but it's still not a free-for-all. 36 grams. That's around 9 teaspoons. And think about this. Just 1 can of regular soda can have more sugar than that, completely blowing your entire day's limit in one drink.
So what this really means is, yeah, sure, raw honey has some antioxidants, and maple syrup has a few minerals that white sugar doesn't. That's true. But at the end of the day, they are still concentrated sources of added sugar and calories, and those tiny, minor benefits do not give us a free pass to just pour them on everything without a second thought.
Okay, so let's boil this all down to the key takeaways. What should you remember? Number 1, honey is definitely a better choice than that highly processed, high-fructose agave nectar. That's a clear win. Number 2, yes, raw honey and pure maple syrup do contain some beneficial compounds that refined sugar is missing. But, and this is the big one, ultimately they are all just sources of added sugar, and the amount you consume is way, way more important than the type you choose.
And one last thing. This is a really, really crucial safety warning. Raw honey can sometimes contain bacteria that are totally harmless to us as adults, but they can cause a very serious illness called infant botulism in children under 1 year old. So please, whatever you do, never give honey of any kind to a baby.
So, when you think about it, maybe we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Instead of trying to find the best or healthiest sugar, maybe the real question we should be asking ourselves is, how little do we truly need? Because the healthiest choice might not be about which sweetener you pick, but simply about learning to use less of it altogether.